Hi, this time on Your Shot Done My Way, we're going to do a black and white conversion. And here we have an image that was submitted by Melissa, and you had a couple questions regarding spots, dust spots, how to tell their spots, and what to do about them. Now, this image is not a great image for seeing spots. They normally show up in clear light areas like blue sky. The key to know if you have dust spots is if they consistently show up in all of your image in lighter areas without any detail like sky, regardless of which lens you use. If they start to become problematic to where there's too much editing required or it's starting to affect areas with detail at apertures you use, then it's time to consider cleaning the sensor. Now looking at this, it looks like there might be a couple spots here, and we can use the visualize spot tool to help. Looks like there might be a few there. That could also be something in the background. I don't know. Looks like maybe one up here to the right, sorry, upper left corner there. So you might have some, but as long as it's easy to edit out and it's only showing up in clear areas, I don't know that I would mess with it. If you do decide to mess with it, the first thing to do is use a bulb blower to see if you can't just dislodge it with air, something like a rocket blower. And that's certainly average user level type maintenance, something you should do with your lenses and your sensor, mirror, eyepiece, occasionally, just as a matter of fact. If it won't come off with a bulb blower, then you're looking at wet or dry cleaning. Dry cleaning would be like a sensor brush or a silicone dabber type tool. Then wet cleaning gets more involved. I do that myself, but in 20 years I have managed to scratch one sensor, and it's a very expensive replacement. For my D4, it's like $1,500 to have that repaired. My insurance covered it, but if you don't have insurance and you don't want to risk that, you could always take it somewhere and have them do it. It'll cost you probably 40, $50, somewhere in that range. And, do it once a year or something. That might be adequate. Asked for a black and white conversion. And looking at this image, we can see everything's packed up pretty tight in the histogram. You've got a large gap and then a bit here, and interestingly, we're well clear of the right side of the histogram. So there should be no issue with loss of data. But looking at this on my computer, I can see that the yellows are really saturated. They're not clipped as in overexposed, but they're really bunched up in a small range, and that means it's going to be hard to get any detail out of that. And if we look at the contrast in this image and the colors in this image, I would basically end up with a very black and white image, which, if that's what you want, fine, but pretty much as it is, all these yellows are just going to go white. We can go and we'll look at soft proofing and we'll see something different. I've got the gamut warning for sRGB. Now if we look at monitor, turn this one off. We look at the monitor display, there's no issue on a monitor. So this is being displayed with LEDs, light sources, there's no issue. But any other method of reproducing these colors, all this is at a gamut. So when we convert this to black and white, that's kind of what's going to happen. All this flower that is out of gamut is going to go to the white side. And you can see there's not much detail in there. So first thing we want to do is optimize this image for the black and white conversion. Now I don't use plugins much. I like to create an idea that I have in my head, and my idea for this is not a real high contrast image, say a medium contrast image with I want to get a lot of detail out of the petals, and there's enough in focus here that I can do that. I should be able to do that. When I use presets, I feel like I'm just picking around, best case, just trying to find a preset that looks like what I want to create. Worst case, I'm just picking around hoping to find something that I might like. A good edit generally starts with an idea. A good image usually starts with an idea. So I have my idea, and to help get there, we're going to start down with camera calibration. First, we want to make sure that this weirdness is not being created by the camera profile being applied. And it's got the default Adobe standard. We can try camera neutral. And see what that did. So difference between Adobe standard camera neutral is a little lower contrast. Seeing a little bit more in the petals. I'm sure they're still all clipped though. But a little bit's coming out. Or we could try camera standard, which is more like the Adobe standard. So we're going to go with camera neutral. And there's like some blue tint in here to it. I'm going to get rid of the blue out of this image. And you can see that's brought a lot out in the flower. And it's gotten rid of a lot more of our clipping gamut issues. And let's see, I'm gonna push the shadows to differentiate them from the yellows. So I'm gonna change their tint a bit, so it's not, the shadows aren't as yellow as the flower. And maybe bring the green up a bit, so I get a little more contrast. Not much. Somewhere in there, I think, is where we're going to start. So we look at the histogram for this, and in this histogram, so we've moved things left and gotten rid of the high reds on the right edge here, and it's a little more uniform to go towards that mid-tone detail image I want to create. So I think we're working in the right direction. I will just apply black and white curve by default, and we can adjust our colors. But I'm going to work with exposure first. Now, I can still see some of those spots. And you asked, at what point would I fix spots? Well, whenever I see them. If I see them at the beginning, I'll edit them at the beginning. It doesn't really have an effect on the processing applied later. Those look a little worse actually, because I think I was in clone with let's go to heel with a decent feather to it and take those spots out. Let's turn visualize spots on. Alright, that looks like it's gotten them. Let's see how that worked. That worked better, much smoother. So I can, at any point, when I see them, they become problematic, I can take care of those. You also mentioned removing this insect, and I don't know that I would bother. We could attempt to do that here in Lightroom, but it's going to be pretty difficult, I think. Just kind of see what Lightroom comes up with. And because of the curvature, it's going to be hard to get a really good match. So if I wanted to be really particular about it, I would do it in Photoshop, but that's actually not bad at all. You would not notice that. And the key to that is largely using heal. You notice that I'm still in heal mode and a decent feather on the edge, and that helps blend it in more subtly. So that's actually worked better than I anticipated. Alright, now let's see what we can do with exposures here. I'm going to start by pulling down the whites, the brightest parts. I'll bring those down because I'm looking for like a mid-tone gray detail out of this. And try bringing down the highlights. Actually, I don't want to bring down the highlights. What I want to do is I want to bring down the contrast. And bring up I don't know, I think I want to bring the shadows down. Kind of bring out more in the petals. Let's see where we're at with all that's done. So that's where we started. That's where we ended up. And I feel like I'm still losing a bit too much in the lightest areas. So instead of going with a global, I'm going to take a really large brush. I've got brush settings, auto mask on, about a 58 flow, and a low feather so that wherever I click, it will select those areas, and then I can build it up by clicking multiple times. And actually what I want to do is pick a lightest area, put the center across on the lightest area, and pick that area, and you can see it's picked those highlights. And I can go out and expand that a bit. Just picked a little more on the outer part. We'll try there. You can see the area that's masked. Pretty well selected the flower. And I already have highlights set to -100. That's because what I had used this brush for last time. We can fine tune that, and we can also work on bringing up some contrast. If we want, we can bring down blacks, see what shadows does for us. Shadows are going to be like our mid-tone grays. Bring those down. And I think that's looking pretty close to what I was hoping for. So turn that off. And we'll go back in here and tweak some settings. I think I'm going to reduce the contrast overall. I'm going to bring up the clarity, which is a mid-tone contrast. So that pops the flower a little bit more. And we look at it, I've got quite a bit of detail out of those petals. Now the brightness overall here, exposure, is going to perhaps look brighter or darker on your computer than it does on mine, based upon your calibration. But I think that's pretty good. At least it looks good on my computer. Alright, overall I'm pretty happy with this edit. I might bring some blacks down, but I don't want to lose the stem into shadows. This area here for me is a bit problematic, and the crop is a little problematic to me, and I'm not going to be able to fix either of those well inside of Lightroom. We get down here to detail, maybe bring out some more. We'll drive sharpening up somewhere around 75%. Is going to add noise. In this case, it feels like texture, and that's often okay in black and white images to have that character, but don't really want it in the background, so we can apply masking to it. It'll be removed from solid areas first, so get rid of it from the background. I'm holding the Alt key so I can see it better, and we could leave it there. So there's a bit of sharpening noise in the petals themselves, but it looks like detail, so I'm good with it. Black and white. And compositionally, what I want from this image is I want the stem over here on this side, and I want the cup of the flower kind of like reaching up to the sky. It is the way it is now, but I want it rotated over to about this point, and I'm not going to be able to do that in Lightroom without seriously compromising. And I can change the aspect, but it still doesn't really give me what I want. So I'm not going to do that here. We'll take the image over to Photoshop. So Command E to edit the photo in Photoshop. And we'll start with a crop. So start by rotating it. It's about what I want. Something like this. And then we'll change the aspect. I'm not being very particular right now. I'm probably going to want it a little on the left side, a little more to the left side. I think something like that is probably where I'm going to wind up. Let's leave it a little loose for now. And then we'll use the marquee tool, and we'll select this area up here, and Command C to copy it, Command V to paste it to a new layer, move that layer underneath, Command T to transform it, and I'll just stretch that out. Somewhere around there should be good. Hit return to save that, and we'll put a mask on the original image. Grab the brush tool, just change the color, big soft brush, low flow, I'm at 30% flow, and we'll kind of blend this edge in. Obviously I goofed up right there, fix that. Switch the brush over. Something like that. And we'll do the same again down here. Actually, what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to grab the lasso tool. I'm going to select points. Command C, Command V, flip that over, and we will Command T to transform it, right click, flip horizontal, reposition it over here. Let's move it behind. It's not going to let me until I'm done transforming it. Alright. I will leave it like that. Move it behind. Go back to our mask. I'm going to reduce the opacity on this so I can see what's behind there. Right. Then I'll brush over the mask. Oops. Not what I wanted to do. And Z. What I want to do is blend it in here. Change the brush color. That'll help. Try to blend this edge in. That's worked pretty well. Now I can stretch that, fill in more of that area behind, and we'll put a new layer. Put a new layer on top, and we will select the clone tool this time. Sorry, clone tool, and we'll pick from this side and kind of blend this in. And obviously I'm being pretty sloppy. Beating myself up with this stuff. And it's a pretty bad, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to blur that quite a bit. I think that'll work pretty well. Let's transform it, kind of stretch it out, make it fit better. Something like that, I think, is going to be where I want it. I'm going to turn it off, grab the quick selection tool, and grab this flower petals. That should be good. I'm going to feather the edge slightly, about 1 pixel or so. Alright, and then I can go down here and let's just add a mask to this. See, it's made the mask so that it's what's selected is white, and what I want is the inverse. So we're going to go Command I to invert it. And that has brought our flower to the front. And let's see what else we get out of this. Compositionally, we'll go back to our crop tool to refine it. We'll pick our ratio. 2:3 is native, so we can see what that looks like. That's a bit tight for me, so I look for maybe a 5:7, more along those lines. And we could rotate it perhaps, so flop that aspect. I think something like this is close to what I want. Yep, that looks good to me. And I recreated a problem there, so I can go back, fill that. Go back to our mask, fix that edge. Turn that back on. Right, it looks like it did not remove it entirely from the petals up there. Oh, I didn't select those petals out. So I'm going to manually brush some of this. Bring that back. Okay, that's what I want. Alright. Yeah, a little detail up there we could clone out if we wanted to. I always do it to a new layer so I don't get results I don't want. And with this one, you can just do the brush, the spot. I'm actually not liking that as well, so I'll go to the stamp tool. I'll pick an area of myself for what I want. Go over here. Then that's why I always go to a new layer so I can mask it out. Get the result exactly what I want. Alright, that looks pretty good to me. Oh, there's a mess over here. I had not noticed that. And I do believe it's that one, so let's transform it. Oops, wrong layer. I'll just drag that over. Notice what I did. It's moving both, so let's escape from that. Unlock the layer from the mask. Redo it. That way my mask stays in place. Alright, a little goofy here. And we could fix that by duplicating this layer. And hit T, flip horizontal. And move that over here. something like that to make it a little more continuous, and maybe turn the opacity down a bit on it so it blends a little better. Play with it more if you wanted to. Something like that, I think. We'll get done with that here. Send it back to Lightroom. And if you really wanted to, an image like this can benefit from a little bit of vignetting. Just a bit. Just a bit. And we can go increase the feather so it's less obvious. We can save highlights in the corners. Turn that off. I like that. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, just a touch. Helps unify it. And that's about what I would do to this image. Alright, let's go back and look at the technicals of it. You know, probably could have got a little more out of it if a little more was in focus and sharp. Used 200 millimeters to blow out the background, which has worked well. You got a nice high shutter speed for hand holding 200 millimeters. I think you could have stopped down just a bit for a little more sharpness, a little more depth of field. You're wide open, and you know, just a touch more at the flower would not have significantly impacted the background, I don't think. So I think the camera settings are real good, but I would have stopped down just a little bit, traded just a little shutter speed, or even a little bit of ISO. If you know you're going to go for black and white conversion, then the grain could even be considered a benefit. We could actually do that. We could add grain to this image if we wanted to. I don't know. For me, it tends to be too artistic. I prefer natural grain if it occurs. So anyways, there you have it. Here's our original image. Here's our images after edits in Lightroom. And our final edit. Well, I hope you've found this helpful. And until next time, my name is Stephen Kirsting. This has been an episode of Your Shot Done My Way.